CrossFit for me was such a big change in the kind of traditional gym training, the bodybuilding type that I was doing, because it is my sport in the way that I love it. Like even on the days that I don't feel like doing it, it's still something that like fires me up. So most of the time it's just about, getting your ass from the couch or from the bed and just like getting yourself out in the gym and like, checking what's on the program, and then just getting myself into the beast mode. So for me, like one big thing is music. If I'm not in the mood, if I'm feeling low, whatever it might be, when I put like my go-to list on, then I'm like, okay, let's go. So yeah, for me, it's just like keeping in mind my why and just like trusting the process and following my program, and then like knowing how I can kind of get myself fired up when I'm not feeling it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Plant Fueled Podcast with me, your host and plant-based nutritionist, Callum Weir. If you're new here, welcome. Listeners of the show already, I'm glad to have you back. On today's episode, we have Tui Van Renterghem, or she's better known online as the vegan CrossFit girl. Tui has an amazing story to tell, which led her to become who she is today. We discuss her upbringing, the defining moment in which led her to take on a vegan lifestyle, her time in bodybuilding, and how she transitioned from bodybuilding into CrossFit. For Tui, a plant-based diet did not hold her back from achieving her goals. Instead, it allowed her to recover quicker, bounce back, and keep smashing those workouts. I will of course link Tui's details in the show notes down below for you to find and learn from her. Tui definitely brings all of her energy and positivity to this episode, so it's one not to be missed. So let's jump right in. Good morning, Tui. How are you doing?
Good morning for you. Afternoon here in Bali. I'm doing really great, thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you on. I think you're 8 hours ahead, aren't you? So I thank you for taking your afternoon to come on and speak and just kind of tell your story.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So you're better known online as the vegan CrossFit girl, which essentially amplifies who you are. Obviously, you being vegan, feeling yourself with the power of plants, and essentially showing off the powers of being a plant-based athlete in your field, which is, of course, CrossFit, and obviously the CrossFit community and just the athletic community in general. But like most people, I don't suppose you were born vegan or raised on a purely plant-based diet. So how was it that we got to the point of you being very young to now the vegan CrossFit girl? So let's delve right into your story. Let's say from your younger life and then the turning point to deciding to go vegan.
Sure. So I wasn't raised vegan, and I actually at some point was eating a lot of animal products. But my parents were vegetarian when I was born. And so the first 7 years of my life, I've actually raised vegetarian. So I had this kind of connection with animals when I was a kid. Like my parents were vegetarian for the animals. And I was like that young girl who loves to play with the kind of stuffed animals, like not the real ones, but the dolls, but the animal versions. So I was always like really into connecting with animals in that sense. But then when I went to school, when I was 7 years old, I started to get treated a little bit like funny about it. And, like other kids can be a little bit mean sometimes. So I felt really sad. I was treated like the weirdo. And then I decided that I want to start eating meat. So I told my parents and they let me do it. So then for quite a long time, I was just like shutting myself off with the connection that I used to have, like the compassion for animals. And I wasn't really thinking about where my food was coming from, like most people. And I was just eating kind of like the normal omnivore diet. But then in my late teens, I got into bodybuilding. And that's when I started to get really interested in, building muscle and all the macro stuff. And I started to actually consume a lot of animal products. So I was eating the typical bodybuilder diet, like a lot of chicken, a lot of meat, eggs, dairy, all the things like on every meal. And I think it's like 6.5 years now ago when I was studying in the Netherlands. And then I came across this slaughterhouse footage on Facebook. And I didn't want to watch it, but something in me made me just click it. It was like from Finland, where I'm from. And it was just a couple of seconds. And I was like, the kind of blindfold that I had built was like ripped off. And I was very shocked about what I saw. And I got very, very sad and angry as well. And then in that moment, I was just like, hey, I can't support this anymore. Like, this is totally against what I believe in. And then I started to dig deeper into like, okay, what is this industry actually about? Like, I knew kind of like always that it's not like, you know, exactly what I would like to support. But that's when I learned about the dairy industry, the egg industry, about how it's all actually operates. And I was like, okay, I need to go vegan now because I can't support this. But at the same time, I was like, what am I going to eat? Like, you know, I was like just eating all these animal products all the time. And I was like kind of making peace in that moment that I'm going to lose my muscles and all my gains. And, you know, like it was kind of like a confusing moment, but I was very clear that that's the right thing to do because of my ethics. And then it just kind of was figuring out from there. So I started to just like educate myself and try to figure out how I'm going to replace all those animal products. And then to my surprise, I actually started to learn about all the health benefits. So I just purely went for the animals. And then when I got into like studying all the things, studying these industries, I learned about the environment and then the health. And then the most exciting thing was actually when I saw how it started to positively affect me. And I started to see how my body started changing, how my energy levels got up, how my training started to get so much better because I got rid of all the like tiredness and the joint aches that I used to have. And then I was like, no shit, like I thought this would be like, you know, a compromise, but it actually turned out to be like a win in every kind of aspect of my life. So that's kind of the short story.
So that's the thing. I think there's so many people, they do come across these videos and that's that instant change for them. Because I know when I was younger, I saw, well, leading up from like, I'd say 12 to kind of maybe 18, I used to see these videos of slaughterhouses, and I always felt that kind of urge to switch over, but also it never, as much as you want it to resonate with you, sometimes it just doesn't, because as you say, people treat you differently. So it was in that mindset at that time of, I don't want to be treated different because I don't eat, because there was other vegetarian kids in my school at that time, and they weren't so much bullied, but they were picked on a bit for not eating meat because it seemed something weird. It just didn't seem like a natural thing to do. So I used to see these videos and be like, oh, I'd love to do that. I also brought a PETA t-shirt when I was younger, supporting PETA. It said like, it had a little chicken saying, I'm not a nugget, but still didn't resonate with me at that time. I was like, I'd love to stop eating meat, but I just can't. And then also you do get your like parents, or you get people saying you can't live without meat. So it took quite a while afterwards for me to switch over. It was just kind of watching more and more and more, and then educating myself.
Exactly.
So that switch for you, was that an overnight switch, or was there a whole transitional period?
Yeah, it was a whole transitional period. Like even that, as of in my soul and like from the spirit level, I was like, okay, I'm a vegan now. But it took me honestly a couple of weeks to figure things out, because as I said, like majority of my diet was just like based on animal products. And I was also in a foreign country in the Netherlands. So I was like finding my way there, already in other things. So I was like, okay, like I needed a little bit of time to kind of sort myself out, and like also learn like how am I going to replace these products. So I think for me it was kind of like a gradual thing of like first leaving out red meats. That was kind of the most obvious one. And then chicken very shortly after that. And then I think I left dairy out. And then the last thing was like eggs and all the other kind of like animal products, as I went to the supermarket and learned like, oh, this thing has milk powder, and oh, this thing has honey, you know, like it just takes a while to kind of like learn all those things. But yeah, as you said, I had the same, like going vegan, and especially in the fitness industry, it wasn't like the easiest supportive community around, like especially when I started CrossFit. Like so many people told me like, you can't do it, you're not going to get enough protein, you're going to compromise on your performance, and just going to be dangerous for your health, and you're being stupid, even some of my coaches. So it was like a little bit of like having to find the courage in me. And I got this kind of motivation of like, I have to show these people, I have to prove these people wrong, because I had that little bit of a kind of fear of like, what if it's not going to, you know, work out well? But I was like, okay, I'm not going to give any power to this thought. I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to show the world that it's possible. And that's what I did.
That's the thing. I was also in the same position where I was like, what if they are right and I'm still wrong? Like it's gonna really backfire on me at some point. Luckily, hasn't at all affected me in the years that I have been. But obviously that's due to research. So obviously research is key when you switch over. Obviously where to get your nutrients from, because some people have such a misunderstanding of nutrition, and without actually, when they go to a vegan or plant-based lifestyle, they don't implement or test out or fully educate themselves with some nutrients. Instead, just kind of jump in head first, and they know very little about it. So for me, and I don't know if it was this for you, but like in that transitional period, because I think my transitional period may have been, I think it was about a year, because I cut out meat, then it was fish, then it was like eggs and milk. But then I became actually obsessed with knowing everything and anything about nutrition. It was literally, as soon as you kind of delve into one thing, you're learning more and more and more. And it's just, it's mind blowing when you get into nutrition.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, it's fascinating, right? Like to this day, I feel like I'm still learning every day. And I got like you said as well, like so many people are kind of doing it wrong, which is understandable, because not everyone is any sort of nutritionist or like doesn't even know the basics. And also all the information is like very, you know, confusing, like even for being in the industry yourself, like there's so many conflicting studies and so much like kind of like bullshit, let's call it what it is, out there. So I don't blame the people. So I was kind of like seeing all these people kind of like trying it on their own and failing, and then blaming the vegan diet. So I was like, no, I need to help these. I need to help these people. So that's also why I got really excited about like learning as much as possible, so that, you know, it's easier to also advise others and do the things right from the start, so that you can kind of like avoid all the trial and error and the kind of confusion that it would be the vegan diet that's causing the problems. So
that's the thing. It's where there's so little knowledge about it. Even in schools, you don't get taught much. You get taught your kind of main macros, so your protein, your fats, your carbs, but you only ever really get taught the meat side of it. So when people go over and switch, they'll be like, oh, it's going to be easy. Everybody is doing it. Which once you get your head around it, it's so easy. But it's that first kind of initial period, and people go back, they're like, oh, it wasn't working for me. And then realize there's things like calorie density to look into. There's all these other bits and pieces. And it's not just, it's not going to be exactly the same as you consuming a meat diet. But
exactly.
When researching and delving into nutrition, what was the most surprising thing that you learned that wasn't true?
Probably just in general, like especially if I think of the fitness side of things, was like how much protein there is. It feels even so funny to say this, because now it's like almost, you know, it's a joke. Like people ask, so where do you get your protein from? But I guess like every vegan hears that all the time. But like, yeah, I think for me it was like, I was so like tunnel vision of when I was doing like, you know, bodybuilding things, that I need to eat this for my protein. But then like, even when I started to, you know, look into okay, how I'm going to do this plant-based, oh, okay, like there's even protein rich sources like tofu, tempeh, seitan, which I just never like thought that they're actually protein sources. And then also like that all foods have protein. So yeah, that was maybe like the kind of first relieving realization. And then overall, just like also how I was raised, and in Finland, like the dairy industry is very big, and like, you know, it's kind of like this idea that you need milk for strong bones, and it's like this health product. So that was also like a big kind of like, how is that even possible that people are believing in this, because it's like actually causing a lot of problems for many people, and it's not very natural for humans to consume dairy. So that was like another one that I was like, oh my goodness, I've been consuming so much dairy in my life. And then overall, just I think how much better you can feel. For me, it was almost like, you know, if you would be like drinking a lot and you would constantly be either drunk or like having a little hangover, and then when you get out of it and you feel so good and clear, that was kind of like when I went vegan. I was like, I didn't know you can feel this good. Like, I didn't know you can have this high energy level. So that was like also like a third kind of big realization, which was very positive, obviously.
Sometimes like there's a brain fog as well that kind of gets lifted.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like when people ask me like what was the kind of biggest change that I saw, I feel like it was just total clearance. Like my brain, like my thinking, my skin, my body, like even that I was like eating clean. I was very obsessed about my diet, or eating clean as I thought at that time. And I was like, I have big muscles, I had like abs and everything. But then when I went vegan, that's when I really like effortlessly leaned up. And I was able to, eat way more relaxed. And I actually got a way better body composition for CrossFit as well. But that only happened when I ditched all those animal products out of my diet.
Absolutely. Because to be fair, I've seen the pictures and like you are muscular. You have this power behind you. And like whenever I showed somebody yesterday a picture of you, and they're like, oh, they can't be vegan. I'm like, she is. She's like,
that's so funny.
It's that narrow-mindedness that there's that you can't build muscle on this, even though it's a well-known thing now. Like for the last 6 years, you had like documentaries like Game Changers coming out being like, these people are on plant-based diets and very muscular, breaking world records, and people are like, nah, still it's
so funny. It's so funny, right? To this day, I have people come up, you don't look like a vegan. Like, but you're not vegan, right? Like, it's so funny. Even that my Instagram name, like all my socials, the vegan CrossFit girl, still sometimes I get some people ask like, but are you actually vegan? I'm like, yeah, like it's,
yeah, you're just joking around.
It's like this stereotype in people that that's not possible. But yeah, I believe that's luckily changing when more and more people are showing that it is not that hard.
It is changing a lot. Like I've had a few people message me in the last week or so, especially now that January has become a huge thing with Veganuary. There's some very kind of gym heavy guys being like, so how do I get protein? And I'm like, well, I was like, as long as you're not trolling me, I'm very willing to help you. But it's kind of you're now there's this transitional period where people are actually seeing the benefits as well, and which is great.
Absolutely.
But it's when you see these massive bodybuilders coming and you're kind of like, oh, like you're actually believing it now after so long of believing that you have to have a very heavy red meat diet to gain that much muscle.
Absolutely.
So sport-wise, were you always into sports, or was this something that actually came in later in life?
It's actually funny now when I think about it. It was like kind of the same story as with my vegan journey. So I was like very into sports when I was a kid. Like since I could walk, I was always racing everyone to like run against me because I was very fast and I loved running and winning. And I was like into doing a lot of sports. But then somewhere in my teens, when I got into partying and I went for like a gap year in Australia, and that I dropped basically all sports and I got really into, like partying hard. And then when I got back home to Finland, I realized like how bad my condition was and how I had gained weight. And I was like not recognizing myself. I was like, I have to do something about this. And then that's when I got into, bodybuilding and that. And then I felt so powerful that I was able to change my body and I became so much more confident and felt so much better. And that's where I decided I want to help other people also do that. And that's when I went to study my bachelor's in sports and became a PT and all that, because it kind of like sparked this change for myself. And that's kind of like how I got back into the fitness industry, like big time.
Bodybuilding, I would never have even envisioned, but I see you as doing CrossFit on a day-to-day basis. I could never imagine then the bodybuilding side. So how was that? How does somebody go from bodybuilding to then straight into CrossFit? Because that's such different sports as well. There's such a different range of how you treat your body.
Absolutely. I must say that I was never competing, so it was more like very amateur stuff. So it wasn't like I was, about to even compete. I had that thought at some point, but then like it wasn't my world with all the having to put the paints and the heels, and I was like, that's not for me. So then I was still missing, like, okay, so what am I going to do this for? You know, because I knew then that I don't want to compete in bodybuilding. And then about that time when I was studying my bachelor's, and we were like obviously having like the big gyms and things at their campus. And then one day, one of my classmates was like, okay, let's do a workout together. I'm gonna take you through this CrossFit workout. I was like, CrossFit? Like I had no idea what it was. And I thought I was like strong and in, you know, good condition. But then when he was like briefing me about the workout and we were about to start, I realized that I couldn't even do like a proper strict pull-up. And I was like all over the place with the CrossFit style of training. And I was like, okay, like this is a challenge. Like I feel like shit at this, and I don't like to feel shit at sports. So that was kind of the first introduction. And then another friend of mine was like interested to just do the CrossFit starting course, the on-ramp. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it with you. And then when I walked to the actual CrossFit gym and I saw people like, you know, doing rope climbs and doing like, you know, Olympic weightlifting, like snatches and handstands, I was like, wow, like this is cool. Like I want to learn this stuff. And then I got obsessed with CrossFit. Like when I did the on-ramp and I got into it, I was like, okay, I actually have a good base for this. And then I went all in and I started coaching also quite fast after that, because I had the background. And since then it's just been, I just switched bodybuilding to CrossFit like that.
When you were in CrossFit, were you vegan at the start, or did that come later on down the line?
I had just gone vegan. So that was like why it was also challenging, because like I just came back from the Netherlands and then I started CrossFit, and then people were like telling me like, oh girl, you can't do this vegan, like it's not going to work, you're not going to get enough protein, all the things. And I was like, that's when I was like really doubting myself, like, okay, how is this going to work? Because I didn't know any other, you know, vegan CrossFitters or anything like that at the time, like 6.5 years ago. It wasn't as like plant-based eating wasn't as popular as it is now. So I was kind of like just figuring my way out by myself at that time. So yeah, it was interesting, like a lot of big changes at that time that occurred, but then everything luckily sorted out quite quickly.
Yeah, that's because like CrossFit as well is quite a big community. Like it's very open-armed and very supportive. And obviously when you go in, and I'm guessing tell them did you hide the fact that you were vegan at first? Because I know there's some athletes in football and rugby and all that, they don't tell people they're vegan at first, just to kind of hide the fact, because I don't know if they feel like it's not the right thing to do, especially in rugby, because these people are huge guys and they're very meat heavy eaters, and it's normally hidden for quite a while until they kind of find out. So were you very open to telling people, or just kind of you hid it at first and just let people figure it out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually also went through phases here. So first, when I went vegan, I was like, you know, like I need to change the world. I need to let everyone know about like all the injustice that's happening. So I started my blog, and I was like, I thought that if people only know, of course they will go vegan, because that's what happened to me. Like, oh, when I knew what happened, I was like, of course I cannot, you know. But then I figured quite quickly that that's not the case. Like many people don't want to know, and they just don't want to make changes. So then at the start, I was more open about it. And I was like, I thought, you know, I can inform people and I can inspire people. But then I went into a phase when I not really like got picked up on at that age, but it was more like I was tired of explaining to people the same things and hearing the same vegan jokes and having this kind of a little bit of like, you know, conversation with some of the people. So I was like, oh, look, I'm done with this. I'm just gonna kind of like keep really low profile. And that's when at some point I was like, not hiding, but I would even say like, yeah, I just don't like meat, like when people will ask. So I kept it really low profile because I was just like very tired of all those like conversations and jokes. And then I think it was like when I started to become better at CrossFit, and I started to also like finish my studies and gain more confidence in general, that I started to find out that people actually came to me to like ask for like, so what are you eating? Like, what like, you know, and more it changed from like being picked up on into like coming to ask for tips. And that's why I was like, okay, maybe there is, you know, room for this in the fitness world, like rather than everyone having to be the same and fitting in the same box, especially in CrossFit, like the paleo diet is really big, and the kind of like eating meat is a very big part, as you probably know. I saw it then rather as kind of like an opportunity to create something on the side, and without me realizing, that was kind of like how my business started as well, because then so many women started to come to me like, oh, thank God, because all my coaches told me I can't do it, you know, being a CrossFitter, and I can't reach my fitness goals as a vegan. So I really felt for them, of course, and feel for them because I was in the same shoes. And so I felt like I was just able to kind of create my own space within something that was always a certain way. And now it's just obviously growing. More and more vegan coaches and vegan fitness coaches are out there, which is amazing. So yeah, that's kind of like how it went in the phases.
That's it's so good that people then, because you just lead by example in the end, and then people can just come to you and just kind of get those tips. What's called, some people just they don't mention it, and then they kind of go undercover, under the radar completely, and then people just don't realize, because there's people that I've met over time that I hadn't realized were on a completely plant-based diet, because they kept so under the radar, but they're doing so many huge things in the fitness industry. I'm like, why are you not telling people about this? Because like if you're there in, let's say, the eye of other people, leading by example, you're gonna show people it's not that hard. I'm guessing like when you first went vegan, you assumed, or people assumed, that you weren't going to have the energy and strength to do such a demanding sport, because obviously in people's eyes they do not go hand in hand, and obviously CrossFit is going to put a huge strain on your body at some points. So how were those aches, pains, and obviously strains, even recovery time after moving onto a plant-based diet?
Yeah, that's exactly what you said. Like, first is when I address that quickly as well. Like, I have had the same, like when I realized with people that some people are actually, you know, vegan or plant-based, is like, that's amazing. But then on the other hand, I understand what they're going through, because like it can be, especially with certain sponsorships and stuff like that, can be a little bit tricky. But yeah, I guess it's also about like the why of people. Like my why is so strong for the animals. Like when I found like, okay, this is my power, and this is like how I can inspire the world and help the people and the animals and the planets, that's when something just clicked, and I was like, I'm just gonna go full on. I don't care about the haters, and I'm just gonna do my thing. But yeah, with the energy levels and the recovery times, that's one of the biggest things, honestly. Like I remember when I was eating all those animal products, I just remember, like even this a long time ago, I just remember being in this kind of like foggy, tired state all the time, you know? And even like when I look at the pictures now, I don't have that many because I didn't like my body at the time, but I look like puffy. I look like inflamed in a way, even again, that I was kind of lean, but it's way more like a kind of puffy lean. So yeah, but I saw in my training, like it's just all the kind of joint aches and all those things went away, and I was able to recover so much faster. I think I was able to add like a whole training session into my week. Because I was like, I just felt like my energy just doesn't run out, you know, like even since then, I felt like I've been sleeping a little bit less than I had to sleep before. So yeah, I can't really even remember how it would be like to feel like that, you know, once you've been feeling so great. But also my fiance, he's doing CrossFit, and he's also training for an Ironman, and he's like a very big guy. He's like almost 2 meters tall and like over 110 kilos. And he gets the same all the time, like, really, are you vegan? Like, what? And he's really good at what he does. And he sees it the same, because he went vegan after we met, which is like about 3 years ago or something like that. And he was eating paleo, so he was really into that, you know, CrossFit diets. And he was experiencing a lot of like problems with his body, with like the aches and feeling tired and foggy and that. So for him, especially because it's more fresh, he still is amazed like how like he can train twice a day, like all this crazy stuff, like cycling for 12 hours and then the next day lifting heavy. It's like this would never have been possible before I went vegan, because I was like just all the time having to sleep and having to, recover from like all these workouts. So yeah, it's been amazing, like how big of a benefit it actually gives you. And people see that, even our friends in the CrossFit community, even they don't say it out loud, but like, of course, like it's the best way when you see like, when people are doing well in competitions and stuff, and you see like, okay, those guys are vegans, like it must work, Yeah. So
that's the thing. Like when people start to see it, it's great. But recovery time is, I've noticed it, like as a runner, I'm just bouncing back every day, being like, I can go do this again. Whereas I didn't overly run when I was eating meat. So I can't compare the times, but I do know when I ran once in a while, when I was out for like 2 days while my legs recovered after doing a very long run. And now it's kind of every day I can get back up, do another run. I can go do like a 15K. I can go do a 10K and go home. It's absolutely fine. Next day I can go to the gym. I can do whatever. And the recovery time, it's boosted every time. And it just seems to be getting quicker each time.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like, I don't even remember how it was not having that. I feel like I'm like a Duracell bunny. I can just keep going, like, it's like, oh yeah, there was a time that I could not like physically do this. So yeah, but it is, I guess, like so many factors, like what the animal products contain and how, like overall the energy levels and how people feel, and even the body composition, how it changes. When people go plant-based, of course, it depends. Like you can be vegan in many ways, very unhealthy as well. But when you do it correctly, that's also what a lot of my clients experience as well. Like they, when we do the transitioning together, it's like the first thing is those energy levels and the ability to train more and not having all those issues with the body that they would have had before. So.
And you're completely on whole foods near enough, aren't you?
I mean, mainly, but I'm not like not obsessed with it at all, because like I consume quite a lot of calories, quite a lot of food. So sometimes I feel like it would be even hard to, try to eat everything whole foods, but definitely like I try to eat as much like calories as possible and as much, fruits and veg. But yeah, I do like treats, and I eat them like on a regular basis, and I find like the 80-20 rule works for me really well. That like basis is really healthy and good, but then there must be room, for me at least, also for like, processed stuff and sweets and treats and occasional.
You can't deprive yourself of that as well, especially after like enduring workouts.
Yeah.
That period of transitioning when you were still working everything out, and obviously how calorie density comes into play, especially with energy levels. How was that for you? Because I know for me, when I first went onto a plant-based diet, I was in shock on my portion sizes that I was happy that I got to eat so much more, but because I was so focused on how I thought a portion size should be compared to now what it is, it's triple the size sometimes. How was that for you? Because it is just mind-blowing when you can get like a Buddha bowl as such, and it's bigger than your head, and it's still less than like 800 calories.
Absolutely. I think this is one of the biggest kind of mistakes, if you will, what people do when they first go vegan, which I did as well, because it's like, if you don't know about the calorie density, it is so easy to consume way too little energy, and that's why people feel low on energy, and they feel like, oh, this vegan diet is not working for me. They get the headaches and they lose their muscles or whatever it might be. So yeah, I also went through that phase at the start. There was like a point where I was working out like twice a day, and I was coaching spinning lessons and doing PT. So I was and like riding my bicycle everywhere. So I was like super, super active. And I wasn't tracking my foods at the time. So I just stopped because I was eating like massive amounts of food, as you just said. Like I felt like I'm eating so freaking much that there's no way that I'm not eating enough, but I just wasn't eating enough calories. So that's when I actually started to lose too much weight, and I started to get a little bit skinny. And that's when the alarm clocks went on. I was like, okay, I have to do something about it. And then when I started tracking my foods, I was like, oh, okay, I need to like top up my calories quite a bit. And that's when I learned about like introducing more healthy fats into my diet, and that it's actually very important, especially in the plant-based diet, because we don't get them with our protein sources as much as omnivores do. So that was kind of like when I started to maybe also not be so obsessed about everything having to be, you know, whole foods and like kind of optimally healthy, which actually can turn against people if you don't reach your calories. So yeah, it was a good learning experience. And since then I've actually like, I feel like it's nice because I can, you know, I can have a vegan donut when I want, I can eat vegan pizza when I want, and it's actually just good for me because I need those calories.
Thing, like, because I used to think that something like rice and quinoa had the same density. So I was like, oh, that's a huge portion of quinoa, and then that's a huge portion of rice. Surely they're exactly the same. Then realized that quinoa had to be doubled and then tripled sometimes to get that energy output as well that I needed for my runs, which luckily I found out over time. But I think when I first went over, like the energy would peak and then just drop off, especially on a day like one day I could be eating a huge amount and the next day a bit lower, and you could completely tell the difference.
Absolutely. I'd say probably like around 80% of my clients, like I work with vegan women, and like the vast majority, they are shocked at the start when we start them with the meal plans or with the macros, like how much they need or get to eat. And for others, it's like freaking out part of like, am I gonna, you know, gain weight now? I'm gonna get fat and da 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 da. But then when we gradually increase, and then they start leaning up and they start having more energy and their training starts getting better, they're like, oh my God, I've been eating way too little for so long, because it's so easy to kind of like if you have learned the model with eating as an omnivore, like what's the portion size, and then kind of like just swapping those animal foods, and as you said, like not being aware of the calories in quinoa and rice. That's why it's so rewarding as well if you track for a while, because then you learn so much about nutrition. It's going to be super helpful even after the tracking phase, because the knowledge sticks with people, right? So it's like a really great way, in my opinion, to teach people about the calorie density and the macros as well.
That's the thing, like, and after a while you can then kind of turn off that tracking in your mind, because you kind of know portion size after a while. So I'm guessing you don't track anymore as much as you used to.
I don't track. I don't need to track. I've been tracking for so long in the past, and I know so much about my body and about what my body is telling me. So I eat very intuitively. But funnily enough, like every time I do track, just to kind of check where I'm at, or if I'm testing some, you know, apps for my clients or something, then I always tend to be within like averagely in the numbers that I would be. Like that's why I'm like, oh, it's great. Like my body knows so well by now. And even eyeballing, just like once you've done it for a while, it's kind of easy to just kind of maintain those habits. Especially because I really like simple foods. Like I like to stick to the stuff that I really like, that's easily available, and then it's just kind of easy to maintain that.
Because you don't track your protein anymore at all. So
yeah.
Do you know how much protein you're on at the moment, roughly?
Roughly between 100 to 140 grams. It depends a little bit if I have like a protein shake or not, because some of the days if I'm busy and if I'm working out more, I feel like I just want to get like an extra shake in. But I'm not obsessed about protein at all, like as of the numbers, but I do have it very dialed in, like on every single meal, other than if I go out, you know, eat a vegan pizza or something like that, then I don't care. But like on my regular daily basis, I'm always making sure that there is a good amount of protein within every meal, because that also makes me just feel more satisfied, more full. So it's just kind of like something that I always check.
I think like when you kind of find out where these protein sources are and you just put them into your meal anyway, that it just does build up over time. I haven't worried about it for a while now, because I'm just kind of like, I know it's there. I know I'm eating it in my breakfast, and I'm eating it in my lunch, my dinners, my snacks. And after a while of tracking it, because I must have tracked it for a year, and then it became an issue because I would then became obsessed with tracking. I was like, this is not good. This is not good for me at all. So I threw it away, but threw the tracking away, and then all of a sudden realized that I was still doing exactly the same thing, because it was just that intuitive eating of just, you're knowing what you're putting in your body. And obviously if you're listening to your body properly, you should know if you need something, more of something, less of something. And normally I'm hitting 100 grams of protein per day, unless I actually have a specific goal. Then I will just up that and know roughly what I'm getting, and it's normally 2 or 3 grams out of protein. It's there, it's readily available as well, and people don't realize that there is such an abundance of it in most of the foods that you're eating. Even the smaller things like rice, they don't realize there is protein in there, so you're actually building up more than what you thought.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's like one of those big kind of things where people go wrong though, is like kind of when many vegans tend to say like, yeah, you'll get enough protein if you just eat enough calories, but then what is enough protein for each individual is so different. Like for the normal population, yes, but then within fitness, like especially for the people who want to build muscle and get lean, the protein needs are quite a lot higher, sometimes up to like twice as high. And then in my opinion, it needs more like looking into actual protein sources, because then when people try to, do this, like, okay, brown rice, chickpeas, like, okay, you'll get enough protein for your health, but probably not for your fitness goals. And that's when, in my opinion, like tofu, tempeh, seitan, protein powders become very, very helpful. And it becomes difficult for people who try to eat fully raw, or who try to like avoid all these things and still hit like very high protein numbers. So that's something that I feel like people often go a little bit confused with when they are kind of trying to figure out how to get protein in the fitness world, which is like more protein than general people.
That's the thing, because like if you are fitting in 150 to even 160, that seems like a lot of food to be eating for some people. Whereas that's when a shake would come in handy, because you don't want to be like, some people just don't want to be consuming that much, or consuming 3,000 calories just trying to get that protein requirement.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're still in the gym most days, like absolutely smashing your workouts. How do you stay motivated to end up at the gym near enough every day? Sometimes when I get out of bed, I just don't want to go to the gym. But how are you training near enough every day?
Yes. So I do also have, honestly, many days that I don't feel like training. I feel lazy, I feel tired, I just don't feel like doing it. But for me, I have such a strong why, and I really much believe in training programs, because if you just always listen to what you feel like doing, what we human beings tend to be like habits of comfort, right? So if I would always just listen when I feel like training, I probably wouldn't be nearly as in good shape as I am. So most of the times I just go because that's what my training program says. And because my why is to really, help the animals by inspire people to, be vegan and live their best life and thrive on the plant-based diet. But then I must say, like, CrossFit for me was such a big change in the kind of traditional gym training, the bodybuilding type that I was doing, because it is my sport in the way that I love it. Like, even on the days that I don't feel like doing it, it's still something that like fires me up. So most of the time it's just about, getting your ass from the couch or from the bed and just like getting yourself out in the gym and like, checking what's on the program, and then just getting myself into the beast mode. So for me, like, one big thing is music. If I'm not in the mood, if I'm feeling low, whatever it might be, when I put like my go-to list on, then I'm like, okay, let's go. So yeah, for me, it's just like keeping in mind my why, and just like trusting the process and following my program, and then like knowing how I can kind of get myself fired up when I'm not feeling it.
You have like a morning routine? Because most athletes I've come across have a huge morning routine, which does have them motivated as well, such as like yoga, meditation, manifestation, all of those.
Yes, I'm a huge believer in morning routines. I've been having a morning routine for a couple of years now, and it honestly changes quite a lot. So it's not like I need to have an exact set thing. I listen to myself quite a lot. I've learned this. I used to like be very obsessed, with tracking and with all the things and having to have everything. But then I've learned, like, when I actually have the structure and then I allow myself to flow in that, I actually feel much better. So even with my morning routine, it often just has like certain components based on how I feel. So sometimes I feel like my body needs a little bit of like yin yoga, or sometimes I feel more like I want to do a little bit more like flowing, something more action yoga. Sometimes just like 10-minute meditation, some journaling, sometimes the beach walk. It's oftentimes more the mindset of I take the first hour for myself. So when I wake up, I like to wake up quite early, like usually between like 5 and 6. And then I don't check my phone. I have like a no phone zone. So I don't want to have the outside world coming into my world before I have taken care of my own needs. And then it's just like listening in. Okay, what do I feel like I need to today? And that's like filling my own cup and making sure that I feel really good. I feel energized and I feel ready to face the world. And then only after that, it's like when I, check in with my clients and I open my phone and allow like the other influences to come in. But if I don't do that, like sometimes when I don't do that, I really feel the difference. Like I feel like if I'm not ready, if my cup is like half empty, then the day can just be a disaster because I just can't take on everything. So a morning routine for me is very, very important.
Yeah. That is one of the things that I have definitely learned in the last year, because I used to have a great morning routine, and then when the pandemic hit, because everything was kind of skew-whiffed all over the place, I used to come in I used to wake up every morning around 5 and then go watch the news. And the news is so detrimental to your health because it's such a negative mindset that it's thrown upon you, that I think I kind of got into a habit of watching every day. I was like, this is not great. And then all of a sudden I was like, what am I doing? No, Callum, stop. So now completely turned off, never on in the mornings anymore. But it was that initial kind of, I've been thrown out of my routine that much that it then threw me off completely, and I started doing these things that I wouldn't normally do. I was never one to watch the news. I was never one to kind of take in that negativity and have it kind of forced upon me to then have that negative mindset afterwards. So I was kind of like, Callum, you need to snap out of this. And then next day it was kind of like off, back into my morning routine, doing that yoga every day, doing a bit of meditation, as you say, journaling as well, which was such a great escape, which I absolutely love doing.
Absolutely. I think it's also, like for any of your listeners who are like maybe not having a morning routine or like thinking about implementing one, it's like, I think social media and like overall, like people can overcomplicate things. Like it can, at some point, my morning routine was like almost stressful because I was like, I need to do a breath work and a yoga and a journaling and it was like became this thing that I was like almost like, like I got that out of the way. And then I realized,
you're stressing yourself out doing it.
Yeah, right. So but I also like when we build morning routines with my clients, it's like more about kind of like observing yourself, like what feels good and what doesn't. Like what you just were saying as well, Callum, like if you feel like, okay, opening Instagram first thing in the morning doesn't make me actually feel good, it actually sucks up my energy, or opening the news, or like starting your day in a massive rush and feeling like all over the place, like if that doesn't make you feel good, like how could you change that? Even just waking up 10 minutes 15 minutes earlier and not opening the phone, not opening the news, and just enjoying a cup of coffee, watching a sunrise or whatever it might be. Like it doesn't have to be this like massive sexy morning routine. It can just be something very simple that allows you to feel good and start the day a little bit more peaceful, right?
Things that make you feel happy.
Exactly. That's what we need more.
and that's the thing, whatever that thing is, because everybody has different preferences to what makes them happy, but don't let other outputs of negativity kind of come into your life and ruin what could have been a great day, but it's now been tainted as such.
Absolutely. And workout also is something, like even when I don't feel like working out, I know that workout is one of those things that I always feel better afterwards. Like I just need to get that in because that like uplifts the mood and you feel, proud of yourself afterwards, and that So I didn't even like see it as a part of my morning routine, but that's kind of like one of those routines, as I think most people can agree, when you move your body, you just feel better. So kind of like when you tend to get lost in like losing those routines, or even whether it's eating habits, like training habits, morning routines, evening routines, to kind of come back to like, okay, how do I feel when I don't do this? And how do I feel when I do this? And am I willing to not feel better because of what? 15 minutes more on Instagram, like whatever it might be, like kind of that self-awareness I feel is so freaking important in like leading our lives. And as I said, like what input we let in, because that is going to determine how we feel and what action we take and what results we get as well.
Absolutely agree with that. So if we were to delve into your food cupboards right now, what kind of staples on that would we find of your day-to-day basis of food?
Yes, a lot of colors. We order like this massive basket. When I say we, me and my fiance who lives with me here in Bali, we order this massive basket of like vegetables and fruit from this local supplier. So they come straight from the farm. And I love it because it's like always such a beautiful creation, because there's like literally like also living here in the tropics in Bali, it's amazing because we do love fruits and we eat a lot of them. So it's like, easy to get them local, easy to get them organic and like in season as well. So that's kind of the biggest staple that we have, that massive basket coming in every like 2 or 3 days. We like to make a lot of like our own juices. So we have like this juicer machine, and then also like smoothies and nice creams and stuff like that. And then other staples, like we talked about protein. So we do love like tofu, tempeh, seitan. So those are like on a daily basis, like always present on our lunch and dinner. Excuse me. And then also my fiance is like, he likes to cook. So he likes to also make like his own kind of like vegan meats out of like seitan type of things, which are also really high in protein. And then oats in the, like, our morning is always like a smoothie bowl. I love a smoothie bowl because that's like you can put all the goodness in and just blend it and then top it with superfoods basically. So that's always something. So that's like oats and plant milk or coconut water, and then some fruits and some protein powder, topped like nut butters and nuts and seeds and whatever. So yeah, the other staples like nuts, butter, seeds, like those healthy fats that we talked about earlier. And then also, of course, like some kind of traditional carb sources, as we need to consume high amount of carbohydrates, both me and my fiance, and in general, like it should be the main energy source for most people. So then we do have like quinoa, rice, pasta, noodles, like all those things that we often have in the lunch and dinner. So yeah, and protein powder, supplements, we just do B12, omega-3s, and protein powder, and then yeah, that's about it, I'd say.
You don't have to have that D3 supplement, seeing that you're living in the heat the majority of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. We have sun all year round, so we don't need it here.
Yeah, that's the one thing that frustrates me when it gets to when just living in England in general, is a D3 supplement is crucial all year round, even when it's hot. Because
I know, coming from Finland, even more north, like yeah. It is definitely, anyone of your listeners, if you don't live in Bali or somewhere in a sunny country year round, like have that vitamin D3 in your diet too.
Absolutely must. So
yes.
When you get home after a long day, you're not feeling like cooking. You really don't want to cook, but you still want something to eat, something quick, simple, a bit nutritious. What are you cooking?
I am a very lazy very lazy person in the kitchen, to be totally honest. So if it wouldn't be my fiance who likes to cook, I would be like the worst as of like taste, because I can see food as fuel, in the sense of like I would just like put together like a bowl of like chickpeas from the can, chop up some vegetables, throw in some tahini sauce or whatever, and not really care about the taste, and put some quinoa or whatnot, and just eat it because that would be there. So I would probably do something like that. If I don't have anything in the fridge, something I always do have is like ingredients for the smoothie bowl. So I always do have like protein powder, oats, some like frozen, strawberries, some frozen bananas, a plant milk or something. So that's like the very emergency meal. If my fiance is somewhere or I just don't feel like cooking, I can sometimes have like a big smoothie bowl for dinner, and that covers everything that I need. So yeah, but I'm definitely not the best like chef wise. I'm more like just eating healthy foods and keeping things simple and enjoying that my fiance likes to cook and that I live in Bali where vegan restaurants are everywhere.
That, to be fair, you can never beat a good old smoothie bowl, because especially in a hot country as well, like that thing's just very refreshing.
Yeah. And like it depends also like like sometimes also like a tofu scramble takes like 2 minutes to make. Just like throwing in a cube of tofu and whatever spices I might have, some soy milk or something, and like that could be potentially if I have some crackers. So I'm more like the person that I just check what's available, what is quick, because if it's over 15 minutes, I can't deal with it. And then I just do that. Yeah.
So we're going to round this off in a second, but before we go, what are your top tips for athletes looking to switch over to a plant-based diet?
I love that question. Definitely the first one is to educate yourself, or work with a professional that you don't end up doing the same mistakes that I did. So that's important that you know what you're doing, because it's very easy, as with anything new, if you have no idea what you're doing, it's very easy to go wrong. And if you want to avoid the kind of trial and error, when knowledge is power. So when you know what you need, what you need to look out for, you're going to feel much more confident. It's going to be way more smooth, and it's not going to damage your performance. And then like what we talked about earlier, like eat enough. This is like probably one of the biggest ones, that especially for us athletes, like we just need more food than normal people, like generally. So making sure that you, so we spoke earlier about the calorie dense foods, that you actually get enough calories, that you look up those protein rich sources, especially if you're into like strength sports or bodybuilding, where that is like more important than, for example, for endurance athletes. And then also one thing which also applies for like normal, like not athletes as well, is like to still, we spoke earlier about the 80-20 rule, to not go into the kind of eating a lot of processed foods and just like vegan mock meats, because that's also a trend that I see a lot, is that people, when they transition, they kind of like just take out the animal products and then they just put in like all these very processed foods, which is fine to have every now and then, but you're not going to feel at your best if you don't base your diet on whole foods. So yeah, those would be my 3 tips. And then bonus tip, to make the process enjoyable, like know your why, and allow yourself the time, as we spoke earlier as well with Callum. It doesn't have to be overnight. For most people, I don't think it's the best option to do it overnight. For some people, yes. So allow yourself, whatever time you need to kind of like get that education in and do things right, so that you can thrive and feel excited about the journey.
Okay. Yeah. I love all of those. I think they're all great pieces of advice. So thank you so much for taking the time to come on and speak to me out of your day. So it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It was so nice to chat.